You and I sit here when we talk about rational markets, but things around us are completely irrational. I just told you I saw a $19,000 bill for maybe a $2,000 job, and you've seen medical bills that are astronomical and make no sense with what we refer to as reality and rational pricing. So we're in an irrational pricing environment, yet we're trying to impose ration on markets. And how can they're irreconcilable?
So are we at the point now, going back to Greenspan's old term of irrational exuberance? We're seeing it in the equity markets as well, to me. You look at some of these charts. In the last year, from April of last year, when the tariffs were first enacted, the low point to where we are now.
I wouldn't call it irrational exuberance, but I would call it irrational existence. We're existing in an irrational environment.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Markets and Madness. As we like to say, the place where we discuss the madness that occurs when economics, politics, and personalities all move in different directions. I haven't been on for a couple of weeks because I got to say, the craziness in the markets, up, down, not making any sense to me. I know Tim has had a good run with it, so let's see what he has to say today. Morning, Tim.
Morning, Fred. They took a little back for me these past couple of days, but not general market direction. It just happens to be stuff I own and stuff I'm short. Stuff I'm short is backed up in my face. Stuff I own is not performing well. I'm a little worried about my Tesla position. That seems to be costing me money. I've been reading bad stuff about Tesla, and sentiment is horrible. But you know, the problem with Tesla is they still think it's a car company, and I don't. So I don't agree with the market. I think it's a battery company, it's a storage company, it's a technology company. He's got these robots masqueraded as cars now. So I don't know what kind of company it is, and I think the pricing determines that.
I was going to say, Tesla is a long-term buy. And the question is, how much pain can you suffer through when it goes down? That's all. You
Yeah,
just
it's one of those
always
classic
add to it.
average in positions, and I didn't
Yeah,
take.
small, small, small.
Yeah, I didn't take that. I unloaded. I tied it up with a pretty big rope, so it's hurting me. But everything else seems to be doing all right. Um,
I gotta say, nothing really makes sense to me.
well, we're in a war. I mean,
Yeah, and you have statements that come out every day, and conflicting statements, and you don't know who to believe, and you don't know who's in charge, and on either side, Trump is in charge on our side, but who's delivering those messages? One day it's Vance, one day it's Jared and his partner there. So I'm not sure what's really translating through, and on the Iranian side. Is it the guy with the suits or the guy with the guns, as someone once said? So I don't know who's really in charge and whether we're really going to get back to the table.
well, it looks like he's taking a different approach here, but he's basically trying to starve them out with the blockade. And I believe this is what I think is going on. Who knows whether my opinion is any different than anybody else's, or better or worse? But it seems to me that you got Bissent trying to freeze the accounts that they hold offshore. So if you're in the IRGC and you're a commander or something, you got money squirreled away in Saudi Arabia, Oman, and that's your bailout money, and all of a sudden it's frozen. So you're relying on your paycheck, and the paycheck ain't coming next week because the oil is backing up. They got no place to pump it. They're going to start capping wells soon, if they haven't done so already, because they got no place to put the oil. They can't ship it out. The storage tanks on the island probably filled up. So Trump is saying, I got nothing to lose by waiting another week. It's starving them. And if you're in the IRGC, you may have said, I'm with you, I'm with the mullahs, but all of a sudden you're out of money, and there's some um, Israeli guy that you've been seeing surreptitiously who's saying, yeah, come on to our side. You can get defections, and I think that's what they're really playing for, trying to get defections in the IRGC. Come and join the insurrection, back the prince. And I suspect that's what's happening. But really, I had no way of knowing that.
It certainly could be. I don't know what this, we thought when this first started playing out that the people were going to rise up and take over the government, and that hasn't
Well,
happened.
I still believe that. I still believe that. The only thing is, if the IRGC is still firmly in command, we talked about this power of metastasizing. I mean, Trump cut off the head of the snake, and now you got 12 smaller snakes floating around in different regions. So all these IRGC commanders are basically fiefdoms in their own. And if you're a civilian looking to uprise, you're not going to go against it. They got the guns. So you're going to need some changes at the local level. And, the shit's rolling downhill. They got no money, and there's no money filtering. You're seeing it. The Israelis are taking advantage of it. Hamas is not getting money. Hezbollah is not getting money. The Houthis are not getting money. All the other little subsets, they're feeling it. So Trump's position is, I'll wait another couple of weeks, but maybe he's going to launch a strike, and that'll hit the markets at some point. Who knows? So, like you say, the markets are in a holding period. But I think the focus is now going to get away from the war. The focus is now on earnings and, more important, guidance. Because they're not looking for earnings. I think guidance is what everybody is saying. Watch out for us next year. This is what we're looking at. So,
IBM got hit with that last week, right?
yeah, yeah.
Good earnings, but bad guidance.
Tesla too. Tesla too. And they knocked the cover off the ball and said this is good this month, but next quarter's not going to be so well. Next year. So the outlook is what's driving everything, and I'm optimistic about the outlook. I'm not reading anything good about it. I'm just optimistic because I think the big beautiful bill has changed, and I think we're starting to feel the effects of the supply side economy. Iran has taken some of the luster out of that, some of the steam out, may delay the output, and you'll see that in the earnings guidance. I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you have the positive outlook, that's what you have to focus on. I'm still mixed. I still think higher oil prices, inflation, wash, where that's going to go. Is he really going to ease into this and where that's going to lead us? It's got me a little nervous, a little skeptical, but clearly it hasn't worked because the S&P is at, pretty much new highs.
My timing was okay. I mean, I got positive about a month ago, right, and it looked pretty ugly, but I felt it turning around, and we got a spike, but I think Iran stepped in the middle of that. And so now we see what happens. Is there anything more important than the election?
This country, no.
For the markets? I don't think anything is. So then I'll ask a secondary question. Has the shooting over the weekend in Washington, the attempted Trump assassination, has that improved his popularity or hurt his popularity?
Mixed. On the face of it, you say, yeah, people are going to support it and say, let's tone down the rhetoric and get this ship moving in the right direction again. Let's all pull together. But I don't see that happening.
I don't see it happening with the hardcore left. I don't see any change in their demeanor at all. In fact, they're denying things that they've said, but they're still going on as bad. I actually watched MSNBC a little bit over the weekend to get a take on what their read was. They haven't changed. at all. So I don't think that's where the change is. The hard left is not going to move. The hard right's not going to move. It's the middle that the question is. And I did watch C-SPAN, and the phone-ins. At least 4 people phoned in and said, "I used to be a Democrat, but they're just out to lunch." So it looks to me maybe
You've
it's
seen Bill Maher say that, right? You've seen Bill Maher, the comedian, say that.
yeah, yeah. So it looks to me like there's a recognition that they're one toke over the line, so to speak.
You said several months back, and you said it many times, that gasoline prices are going to impact the election. And I think it's not just gas prices. Housing prices, at least in the Northeast, are through the roof. Through the roof. You're seeing houses appreciate 80%, 60% in 5 years, 4 years. And Trump has been pushing that. He's supporting the higher, he wants lower interest rates and higher housing prices. What got him elected was the young people. Young people are disenfranchised now. I think they're saying, "Look, we can't afford to live this life. We got $4 gas, and we got a 3 bedroom house in a reasonable neighborhood that's going for $850,000. How are we going to live this? I'm paying rent of $4,000 a month for a 2 bedroom apartment." I think he's losing the younger people, and he's losing the people in the middle class that are on the edge.
Uh, I wouldn't dispute that. The counter to that is the surge after Charlie Kirk got assassinated. The youth vote moved in his direction pretty big, so maybe that won't hold on, or he's losing it. But that's a counterbalance to what you're saying.
I think the young people got him elected president. I think it was the youth vote that, it was the YouTubers, it was Barron Trumps getting them on different podcasts and showing, well, we're going to make this affordable. We're going to bring this back. And I think that dream is ending for a lot of people.
Yeah, and the question is whether or not they blame him or what led up to it. You know, I mean, we've been going in the wrong direction for a long, long time.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I think Doge to come to fruition, and that sort of died.
Well, it's another piece toward popularity. Um, we're news junkies. We look, you and me, we're not, I don't think um, we are representative of popular vote. So that's a hard thing for somebody who pays as much attention to the issues in the markets as we do. Um, but your average voting Joe um, has has really had his neck spun around by a lot of different events, and the question on the table is whether or not that middle has moved right or left. And to your point, it looks to me like they moved left, at least up to this point. Um, and gas prices are not going to help that, and inflation's not going to help that. Um, that said, if you look at the statistics, they got more money in their pocket now to offset the inflation they're dealing with.
Not the kids, not the young people, not the 18 to 28-year-olds.
Yeah,
If you have a house and you have a stock portfolio, you're doing well. You've got assets, you've got hard assets. As Dennis Gartman used to say, if you own stuff that hurts when it falls on your foot, yeah. That, young kids don't have that. They're scraping by paycheck to paycheck. I know families that are making 200 grand a year with a couple of kids that are struggling, that can't make it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's what
and
he ran on. He ran on the fact that we're going to fix this. We're going to get this back to where you want, and it's not.
mm, yeah, and he's had a Congress and really much razor thin margins, but he's had a Congress with him.
And
Yeah, And that's working against him in the election too.
He's done a couple of things over the last, I want to call it now 6 months, that has changed my opinion of him. Initially, when he ran, Epstein files, we're going to release everything, we're going to release it, we're going to get out there. And then it's not a big deal. What are you talking about? So there's nothing there. There's nothing there. And there's still, half of these files haven't been released, and it's leading to a lot of questions. No foreign wars. We're not going to get into any foreign wars. And I understand what Iran has been for the last 47 years, the problem and the fights and the supporting of terrorism throughout the world. But there's young people who look and say, wait a minute, you told me no new wars. Why are we sending people, 5,000 troops over there now when this is what you promised us? So I think he's backtracking now. And you could say it's the principal post that he's doing it. He's sacrificing his last 2 years to get this done. Or you could just say he just doesn't care anymore. It's like, I'm the boss. I'm going to do what I want to do, how I want to do it. I think it's going to be a very tough road.
Well, my only counter to that, and I hear what you're saying, is, again, I'm not representative of certainly the youth vote, but it wasn't like he had a choice. I watched what happened when they hit Israel like that in October. Yeah. I was appalled at that. I saw that as sort of the last straw. And it was financed by Iran. And, I learned one thing in Watergate going back years ago. Follow the money. And the money came from Iran. And I thought to myself, they'll do anything. They'll do anything. You could argue whether they were close to a nuclear bomb or not, but there's no doubt that they were moving in that direction. So I don't know what the word, what it means to say it was imminent. I don't think imminent matters. I think they were going there. It was 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. They were moving in that direction. And no president has stopped them. And I got to take my hat off to Trump for taking a position there. That, now, maybe he saw stuff. I mean, they're privy to stuff that we don't see. So maybe he saw stuff that said to him, you can't wait any longer. It's possible. It's possible the Israelis showed them that. It certainly seems that way. I mean, when they launched that missile into Diego Garcia and said, okay, we could put a missile 2,500 miles, and they demonstrated that. And it was a direct violation of the agreement they signed that said, we're going to keep 1,000-mile or 1,500-mile ballistic. They were at the doorstep. Even now, you can argue that they can launch a dirty bomb into Europe. So to me, that regime has gone too far. So you had to stop it at whatever price. You had to stop it. And I think you talk about inflation. You want to see inflation when oil goes to $500 a barrel? I saw, and you saw, 22% inflation here in the United States. And it was advancing by leaps and bounds. When you get inflation out to the double digits like you do, in fact, I would argue, do you know what inflation was when Nixon imposed wage and price controls?
8% or something like that?
Yeah, 3.5%.
3.5%.
3.5%. And you had people wearing whip inflation now buttons.
Yeah.
And Nixon imposed wage and price control, which is probably the most drastic anti-inflationary measure you'll ever see. And it blew up right in his face.
Yeah.
Of course, it didn't work. When we start to, if we saw what amounted to a dirty bomb in one of the foreign capitals, we're at World War III. I don't think if you're the president and you see that as a real, now I'm not saying that was the case, but if Trump saw that as a realistic scenario, then I think he's doing exactly the right thing. And we don't know what he saw. we only know it's said. We don't believe anything that's said.
Exactly.
Yeah. But
Exactly.
I do believe that they launched a missile 2,500 miles.
I do know that there are a lot of players now that want to put their foot in the toe, and you have to respect. Where does China sit on this? Where does Turkey sit on this? Turkey's the wild card, right? They're NATO, yet they're they're Persian, right? Where do they sit through all of this?
Well, I don't think NATO matters anymore. He's
Yeah, I
told
know you said that.
NATO has they didn't show up.
They don't believe it. They don't believe it was imminent. They don't believe it was a justified war.
Yeah,
I'm
and that's
assuming.
what's remarkable because their capitals could be hit.
Yeah,
And they're on the doorstep with Ukraine, and they need us in Ukraine. And Iran is the major supplier of drones to Russia. So, NATO
either they're
should have been
frightened,
there.
either they're frightened, or they don't believe the intel that we seem to believe.
See, now I don't think so. I think it's that they see their population as heavily Muslim. I think that's what England's all about. Starmer has taken that position time and time again, and he's losing ground among the non-Muslims. Well, what do you have? What do you have in New York?
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
Spain is out of the picture. By the way, I think that's the trade of the year. Buy puts on the Spanish equity index. Because how would you like to be? How would you like to be the Spanish negotiator coming over and trying to negotiate tariffs with the Trump team? You know? Oh, you want to export your Rioja? Okay, that'll be 75%. So those guys are going to face tariffs like you've never seen.
They're going to sell into Europe. They're going to be a main supplier to Europe and hope, and probably China as well.
Yeah, well, they don't have a clear road into Europe either, selling wine. They got to buck France there. So, and Europe is as protectionist a group as you've ever seen. We see them as one block, but when they negotiate amongst themselves, Spain is really the outcast here, I think. I think that's the best trade on the board, to tell you the truth.
Term, yeah. I don't disagree. There's going to be some fractures, certainly.
Yeah, I
Um,
took a
but in
starter
terms
position.
in terms of the market, just getting back to where we stand now, what are your thoughts on the dollar, metals, and
Dollar
oil?
confuses me. The dollar confuses me. Everybody tells me it's going to go down. I'm actually short, but I'm short. Here's the problem with the dollar. You don't really have a Fed that's believable in terms of inflation fighting. Not with Powell, not with Warsh. So
Then
we've
why
gone
isn't
through periods
why
in
isn't
time
gold
where,
rallying?
yeah, that's the other thing. We've gone through periods in time where you see high inflation and the dollar goes down because its purchasing power drops. But we've seen high inflation and the dollar goes up because the belief is that the Fed is going to tighten and take rates up. Uh, and what is this Fed going to do? They seem to be ignoring inflation, and probably for good justification. Iran is the driver now, and how long is Iran going to be there? Iran's going to have, when this is over, Iran's going to have a glut of oil to sell, and we've got plenty to sell, and Venezuela's got plenty to sell, and Russia is selling oil. So we're faced with a glut of oil.
So the idea is to do sell the upside, the 15 delta calls, right? And if it does get up to there, up to that point, you're going to get yourself into a good position, a good short position. Buy the
Yeah,
downside, sell the upside,
hmm
6 months out.
I'm okay with that. I don't think you'll see a resolution, um, but just between the U.S. and Venezuela, there's enough oil out there to satisfy these markets.
but it's what the market fears. That's what's not the
It's
reality.
also the refining capability. We don't have the refiners. We've got the crude, but we don't have the refiners.
Yeah, yeah,
Those are probably stocks to buy. Well, the companies build refiners.
yeah.
But that's it, another long-term play. They don't see revenue for quite a while, and they take a long time to build.
Um, Earnings came out last week. We talked about Tesla and IBM, and it's more the guidance rather than the earnings themselves. I know you've been positive on the earnings picture.
Hmm.
What are you thinking now?
Well, I think Iran cloud muddies that up a little bit. Inflation outlook muddies that up a little bit. The Fed outlook muddies that up a little bit. So it's hard to get a clear picture on what's going on. But I, you know what, the source of my optimism is that we have supply siders. And the last time we saw a supply side was the Reagan administration. And that turned the economy around from the way it was, from a monetary driven policy to a fiscal driven policy. And we had 20-year rally. So if you're thinking in terms of those time frames, 10 years, 5 years, yeah.
There still isn't stopping spending. They're not doing anything to stop it. You can't get them on board with that. And I know your point was if he grows GDP on a percentage basis, the deficits look like they're reduced, but they just can't help themselves.
That's true, but what's the first question I asked you?
Yeah,
What's more important than the election?
yeah.
Nothing's more important than the election.
And my fear is that you're going to see the left in control, and you're going to see spending like crazy.
Well, the right's no slouch.
Yeah,
Spending too.
absolutely. Both sides are guilty. They can't help themselves. They can't help themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and the debt, as optimistic as I am, the debt is at levels that concerns me.
Yeah.
It
So
really.
I've been very cautious. Like I was looking at some charts going back a month ago, and I really thought we were going to get down to 600 in the SPY, and we got to what was it 630 or something like that, and then boom, back up to 700. There's just so many things in the back of my head that scare me. It's much more comfortable being bullish, right? You feel much better. You don't feel like you're at the crap table betting on don't pass.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I feel like lately. But
Well, it's hard for me to be bullish. I mean, I've been negative for a while. I guess I'm sort of 60-40. You know, I mean, I got some pretty big short positions against my book, but it's my book. But they're kicking me today. But my book has been carrying me. If Tesla would wake up and Musk would have a friendly statement, I'd like to see that. You know.
I just, I don't know. I can't get my. We read this one guy, you and I, and he keeps saying when you see a bubble, go in there and, and blow on it and pop, get it to the point where it's about to pop. You know, don't just walk away. And I see so many signs that we're in a bubble. I'm telling you, housing prices. I, I've told this story a million times. In central New Jersey, a house that I bid on 5 years ago, I put an offer in 75,000 over asking 5 years ago. Lost it. It sold for 100,000 over asking. Did a little work on the house. It sold a month ago for a 60% increase, 70% increase
Wow.
over what it was. And they probably put 150 grand into it. It did not warrant those numbers in no way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm seeing all sorts of things now. I live in an area where Netflix is coming in, and there's a lot of talk that Hollywood is going to be moving to Central New Jersey. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. It's a great area. You're close to the beach. You're close to the city. You got ferry transportation, but does it warrant $1.3 million for a 3-bedroom house? It's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. And to
Yeah.
me, it's a bubble. You know.
Yeah, and you got more and more kids that are going to be living with their parents. This guy who just shot up Washington, 31 years old, and he's a developer, and he's living with his parents. There's something wrong with this picture, no doubt. And we've been moving in a wrong direction for a lot of years. Um, the education system is deplorable, absolutely deplorable. We've you got kids going into college that need remedial courses to get them to through the first year. We're not training people properly. It, it's the haves and the have-nots, and then the policies that were supposed to prevent that encouraged it, fostered it. The education system. We're going to pay the price for the education system for a long time.
Yeah. You know, Trump talked about ending the Department of Education. I don't think he's really done that. That's one of the things that he ran on. Bring it back to the local level.
Yeah,
We still have an education secretary. It's still part of the cabinet, right?
yeah, but the states are no better, really.
Yeah, because this, I mean, what's really got to happen is it really has to get down to the local level in terms of education, anyway. You know, you have to police your own area. There's so much fraud and waste on the state level.
Well, I guess that's the other point I was going to make to you about the election. You think the level of fraud that they're uncovering um, in California, in Minnesota? I mean, we've come to accept price levels that we regard as ridiculous, uh, both in medicine. I mean, you go to for a checkup and you find out that somebody's getting billed $5,000 for a checkup. I just got my car fixed. I was stopped at a light and some guy hit me. Maria said to me, "What do you think damages are?" I said, "Probably $6,000." She said, "Really, that much?" I said, "Well, you know, there's the tail that they got hit in the back, so the gate. Yeah, maybe 6,000. I wouldn't be surprised to see that." Final number was 19,000. The car cost 35,000, and it was 19,000. Now, insurance companies arguing with them, but that's what I mean. We've come to accept ridiculous pricing levels. You're talking about houses. I'm talking about cars, autos. I'm talking about going into an amenities center and seeing a bill for like $2,000. I mean, these are really ridiculous levels. But we've come to accept them. We laugh at them
Is
and
that a
say they're
function of
ridiculous.
inflation, waste, fraud, all of the above?
I think fraud and waste. I think fraud in large part, you know.
I don't know.
I mean, look at Minnesota. Look at the level, the numbers,
But I
you know.
haven't heard of any arrests or indictments
Well,
exposing this
that's
stuff.
that's another thing. The legal system is so backed up. I mean, look at what happened in California. They got hospice people that register, and then they live. A hospice, by definition, is a 6 month term. You know, you get tied into hospice and you live 5 years. There's something you earned in hospice, but they're all over the place. The level of fraud is astonishing, and if you could, and I'm not saying you can, but if you could reduce the fraud levels to tolerable levels, the inflation rate would be down to 2%.
Well, you saw what's going on now in I guess it was California that they wrote a bill to this guy Nick.
Yeah,
McKinley.
yeah, right. You can't uncover the fraud anymore.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can't.
Let's
And
institutionalize it.
I'm just trying to understand how they rationalize that. The lawmakers that wrote this bill. And I saw something where he's interviewing the people saying, just tell me about it. And they just tight lipped and they just walk away. And one lawmaker said, it has to do with privacy. Well, whose privacy? I don't understand. I can't get my head around
Yeah.
that at all.
And that's what's funny. You and I sit here when we talk about rational markets, but things around us are completely irrational.
Yeah.
I just told you I saw a $19,000 bill for maybe a $2,000 job, and you've seen medical bills that are astronomical and make no sense with what we refer to as reality and rational pricing. So we're in an irrational pricing environment, yet we're trying to impose ration on markets. And how can they're irreconcilable?
So are we at the point now, going back to Greenspan's old term of irrational exuberance? We're seeing it in the equity markets as well, to me. You look at some of these charts. In the last year, from April of last year, when the tariffs were first enacted, the low point to where we are now.
I wouldn't call it irrational exuberance, but I would call it irrational, irrational existence. We're existing in an irrational environment. You're talking about pricing, housing prices moving 60%, 70%. I'm talking about fraud at multi-billion dollar, maybe trillion dollar levels. To me, that's irrational. We're talking about irrational pricing. We're talking about irrational existence.
Yeah, and what I'm saying,
It's not exuberance.
look at some of these individual stocks. You know, people doing anything they can to get on the AI bandwagon, to get on whatever. It's, you know, they're just, you got to buy it. You got to buy it. It's to me, it's a bubble. There's a lot of bubbles around, and sometimes it takes 2 years to get through the bubble to have it burst.
Well, I think that we're in an irrational pricing environment. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And the administration has tried to impose rationality on the system. And maybe they're successful, maybe they're not. I don't know, but that's where we are.
So we're basically living through irrational markets, whether it be
I don't think the markets are irrational. The markets are reflective of irrational prices. Okay, if you're going to price an auto body shop, and I just gave you an example of an auto body shop grossly overpricing and getting that money, then what's the stock price for that auto body shop?
that's the whole point of private equity, right? That's what they're basing it on. They're buying those companies up at those inflated multiples, and they're putting those prices out because they have to justify it, or else they close them down.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, you know. And we're both very skeptical of private equity. We think that's a problem, a big problem waiting to happen. It's could really drag down the economy.
Yeah, I guess at heart, what we're saying is that rationality is going to be imposed. And I think that if I had to look at your argument, you talked about the kids, some couple making $200,000 with two kids that are struggling, and to me, that really can't exist at a 2 to 3% inflation level. We're taking these inflation levels up to levels that more resemble 8 or 9%. That seems to be the environment now. We never believed the numbers that the government gave us for inflation anyway. I mean, what is the true level of inflation? We just talked about a couple of sectors that are nowhere near 3% inflation. The problem is it's been baked in for so long that we just don't see it anymore.
CPI, X auto, X food. So you could
Back in the
reduce all those
80s,
numbers out.
back in the 80s, I had somebody telling me that they worked for a hospital and the hospital was charging $75 for a blood pressure. And I was putting 50 cents in a machine to get my blood pressure. And you go into, a grocery, yeah, a supermarket, and there's a machine for free that you stick your arm in. And the hospital back in the 80s, I'm talking about 40 years ago, 45 years ago, was charging $75. So we've accepted what we've been referring to as irrational pricing for a long time. To the point now where if you're a kid, you're born in 2000 and you're 26 years old, that's all you've seen is irrational pricing all your life. It's really weird. It's a really strange time. I mean, maybe this is maybe we're rambling here, but
I'm gonna have to cut it short. We're running up to 40 minutes now.
it's a dose of reality.
It
All
is.
right.
It is. But that's my fear, and I know you're a lot more optimistic. Maybe your optimism is short term, and my pessimism is long term. But it's tough to coexist in the two worlds right now. For
Well,
me,
if you're going to stay alive, you got to look at the whether or not you think the elections are going to move in one direction or the other. I think that's the whole ball game here, the election, and I no longer believe the polls. I think the polls are bought. If anything has shown us that, it's when Trump got elected in the first place. Hillary was
yeah,
hands-on
I
winner.
think you gotta talk to your neighbors and find out if they're still on board.
Well, and whether or not they represent the voting public, I don't know who does anymore. Anyway,
All right. Well, it was a good chat.
yeah, good to talk to you.
All right. Take care.
Take care.